Welcome to the Hot Rod Hangout Podcast.
Whoop whoop.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Ashley.
And tonight is another episode of the High Class Trash Builder Invitational. We have Ron Lahr with the Outlaw class. What's going on, man?
Oh, not much. What's happening?
Oh, just living a dream. Nice and toasty down here in Florida. So,
I bet it is. It's really nice here in Kentucky right now. I think it's about 65 here.
You know, I've had a couple podcasts this week, and everyone so far has been all over, but they've said that it's been pretty decent weather. So it's been good, I guess. Because I know
it's probably 20 degrees above average right now.
I know it was a couple weeks back. Everybody I talked to was like, "Oh, we've gotten 14 foot of snow, and it's horrible." So it's good that everybody is on the good weather section now.
Absolutely.
So, what originally got you into cars?
Well, I was probably 14 or 15, and I used to race as a kid. I used to do those BMX bicycle racing.
Okay.
I did that, probably 12 to, 14 or 15. And then I got into the three-wheeler. We didn't have four-wheelers back then. We had three-wheelers. So we got into three-wheeler racing. And then, I was probably 17, and I got into the drag racing. But what really got me into the cars was my uncle. My grandparents raised me. My dad's mom and dad raised me. And my aunt and uncle lived right across the driveway from my grandparents. And he was a dragster racer back in the late 50s, early 60s. And he built one hot rod a year. It'd take him 1 year to build and he didn't have any money. He has tons of talent, but he didn't have any money. And he would just make some of the coolest things for no money. And my grandfather, he was a contractor. He built houses for 54 years. And I helped him and I hated woodworking. I hated it. I always wanted to hang out with my uncle and learn how to weld and work on cars. So his name was Hank Lahr, and he was kind of my mentor. He just a phenomenal guy. Just, if you would ever meet anybody in the world, you'd want to meet Hank Lahr. He's just, the stories in this podcast I'll tell you about him, it'll blow a lot of people's minds. He was just such a smart guy. And I was out in the shop with him one day, and my nickname as a kid was Rookie. And my grandfather gave me that nickname. And he said, Rookie, he said, don't ever build a car like anybody else. And this is probably in the late 70s. He said, if you can build a car for $3,000 to compete with a $20,000 build, it's what your mind did and not your wallet. And I thought, man, that, because he made some of the coolest. We'd go to car shows and everybody would have their, later when I was a teenager, they would have Chevelles and Mustangs with $10,000 paint jobs and all this. And he would bring something for $2,500 or $3,000. And there would be more people around what he brought just because it was different. It was just a different looking vehicle than your norm, So that's basically how I really started liking cars, was through him.
What made you change more? Because it seems like, that was more of a muscle car. What made you change more to the hot rod, rat rod builds?
Well, he built like the older stuff, 30s and 40s, and then he built a really cool '69 Chevrolet pickup truck, and he built a replica Indy car from like the 20s, and it's a saying that he said. I I don't even know if I can say it on this podcast, to be honest with you.
Go for it.
I like the non-fendered old cars with no fenders.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, Rookie, he said, fenders are for pussies.
Hey.
And I'll never forget when he told me that too. He was just, I don't know. He's passed away. He's probably been gone, I don't know, maybe 9 to 12 years he passed away. And I miss him every day. He was just a huge, he was right across the street from my grandparents. So he was much as my mom and dad as my grandparents were. I was at his house as much as I was at theirs. And they had 3 children, and they were like they had 1 son and 2 daughters. They were like my brothers and sisters. They weren't like my first cousins. They were my brothers and sisters.
Right.
So, learned a lot of, stuff from him, over the years. And I'll tell you a cool story about him. He run front engine dragsters, like I told you.
Mm-hmm.
And my grandfather told me a story one time. He said he walked outside, had an old army tarp, and he had a bunch of sand spread out all over it. Right, like sand that you put in a sandbox, just regular sand.
Yep.
And it was warm that day. I lived up north Indiana, by Fort Wayne, Indiana. And my grandpa he said he walked by and he said, I have no idea what he's doing. And, after he cleaned everything up and he asked his son, he said, what was you doing with that sand? He said, well, back when they built the dragsters, they wanted them as light as they could get them. So basically they built the frames out like muffler tubing.
Okay.
So this is in the early 60s, and so what he did, they would take a piece of 3-inch muffler tubing and they'd weld a cap on the end, and they would stuff that full of sand, dry sand, as tight as they could get it, and then cap the other end. And they made their own homemade bender, so when they bend it, it wouldn't crinkle the metal. That's pretty ingenious, really.
Whenever you said sand and then muffler tube, and I thought that's where that was going. But yeah, to think of that, and I've said it numerous times before, the old school guys that didn't have the fancy benders or English wheels or anything like that, and watching them create tools to get the job done and what they could do with that, for lack of a better way to say it, inadequate equipment is amazing.
And every weld on that was gas welded with a clothes hanger. When they'd weld the frames, they would gas weld them.
Yep.
And just I don't know, he's just a super guy, man, and I would not be the person I am right now without him. I can tell you that right now. He definitely was and the funniest part, tell you another funny part about him, as a kid, 12, 13, 14, when I was doing the BMX bike racing and stuff, I would go get his tools and use them to work on my bike and all that, and I'd leave them outside. And as a young kid, he hated me. He didn't hate me. He highly disliked me because I would always take his tools, leave them out. They'd get rusty, And I said he didn't have no money, so he didn't have money to replace that stuff.
Yep.
But later in life, we were best friends. I live in Kentucky now, and he lives up north Indiana. But we talked on the phone probably the last 5 years he was alive. Every day on the phone, 7 days a week, we talked on the phone. And we talked cars every day. And I was telling you, before the podcast, we were talking before that, in 2000, I started a small business. I've been a chassis builder for 40 years. And basically, all I do is like open wheeled hot rods. I'm a straight axle guru. Anything you ever want to know about a straight axle, I can tell you. All the geometry, how everything works in a straight axle, the Ackerman, and on your spindles on a straight axle, Chrysler, Ford, and Chevy all had different angles.
Yep.
On the spindles, and that's called inclination. So you can actually take a Ford, like the picture I showed you of Trailer Park Millionaire, the truck that I'm working on now. Well, it was a Chrysler axle. I think it was a 38 or 39 round tube. Well, I changed the inclination on that to a Ford to run the Ford spindles and the Ford disc brakes. And on my build-off for the High Class Trash Invitational, I'm going to use an axle identical to that. I've got a couple more of them, and I'm going to do a lot of videos showing these guys that don't know how you can change the inclination on these axles, and to get cheaper spindles and cheaper disc brake kits. Because like if you bought a disc brake kit for that axle, I think it was about $1,200, and you can get Ford spindles and a disc brake kit from you can get them on eBay or Speedway or whatever, and for about $500-$600. So that's even on this Invitational, I'm an outlaw class. It's unlimited money. I still build everything on a budget. I will be under the OG budget for the outlaw class. My main goal is to build the coolest thing I can for the cheapest amount of money. And I don't care if I win or lose. That ain't even my Richter scale. All this does is push me to build another car that I can drive and display, hey, this is what you can do with $10,000 with a little bit of talent and a lot of ambition. And that's what I try to get out there to like these young kids, I know everything is so high anymore that for a young kid and a wife, they're trying to just make it, that he wants to build a car, a hot rod, a muscle car, a low rider, whatever he wants to do. They just don't have the money to do it. And it's just really sad. I mean, I tell, I'm almost 58 years old, and I tell my friends, I said, when you go to the car show, how many 20 and 30-year-olds you see walking around this car show? There's not many. There's 100 of my age group to 5, 20 or 30-year-olds. Because they just don't have the resources to get it done. And I hate that. I hate the way the economy and everything's happened over the years.
That's why that was part of the reason why we started the podcast, and the slogan of we're a younger generation trying to keep hot rodding alive is, the days of going and picking up something for a couple $100, like the generations before ours, is gone. You're seeing cars that are pretty much, gone, and there's commas in the price. And also, I was telling you, we did cruise-ins and stuff, and there was a young man that pulled up, and it was a Honda Accord or something, and he parked way over on the side, and he walked over to talk to us, and I said, go bring your car over. And he's like, oh, y'all don't want me over here with y'all. And I'm like, no, like, come on over here. And he gets over there. I said, well, tell me about the car, man. He's like, oh, well, y'all mess with us. I said, tell me about your car. And when he got started, the passion was there. And he said, man, I would love to have an old car. And he's like, but I have a wife and a kid, and I can only afford one car. And it has to be reliable because I put my wife and kid in it. And I said, well, You know, that's completely understandable, because the days of, you know, being able to go make a good living and afford a house and a vehicle and hobbies, it's going away. And also, you know, you have, that was kind of one of the reasons why the build off, when Jeremiah told us about it, that's one of the reasons why I was like, man, that's awesome. I really want to get some of y'all on, because y'all are showing that you don't have to have 50, 60 plus to have something cool and get out and enjoy it.
Yeah, this with Marketplace now, there's so many deals out there, but you got to be patient. I know people get all excited and worked up, and they get a little extra money, and they say, man, I want to buy a body right now, or I want to buy a set of tires and wheels or whatever. You know, sometimes, you know, just be a little patient and you'll get the better deals. Like I said, I already know I've got multiple bodies I can choose from, but I don't even know what I even want to build yet. I might actually take 3 of them and put them on Jeremiah's site, and the guys in outlaw class, they can pick what Ron Lahr's going to build. I might let them make my mind up for me. Because it's not about winning or losing. It's about hanging out with like-minded people that enjoy the car industry and talk cars like me and you. We're just having a good time talking cars. It's awesome.
Well, and the victory, the first victory is getting to Mississippi. You know, if y'all build something cool and you make it to Mississippi, that's win number 1. And then the cruise, okay, it made the cruise. All right, cool. That's a win in itself. And also, everyone I've talked to so far, and kind of everybody in the rat rod community so far, you know, majority of them, you know, will tell you, hey, that's a nice car. I like how you did that, or you know, how'd you do that? Or, you know, and everybody's willing to share and conversate about their car and give props where props are due. You know, I might not have done it that way, but, you know, hey, it worked for you and it's your car.
Exactly. Here's the thing. I've had a lot of people in my lifetime come up to me and bring me their car and say, hey, what do you think of my car? You know? And I said, even if it's not my thing, like you did the guy with the Honda. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a chassis builder, so I build, and I build exotic chassis. You know that. You've seen one on Trailer Park Millionaire. I build stuff that's, you know, people say, well, you can't build nothing that nobody's ever built because everything's been built. No, that's a lie. There's people building cool stuff that nobody's ever done every day. You're just not seeing it. You know, when I sent you pictures of that frame on my truck, you're like, holy, I've never seen nothing like this.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
Well, I'm going to tell you about 2015. It's Rat Rod Magazine Build Off. You know, Jeremiah talks about them 30-day builds.
Yeah.
I did a 30-day build, 2015. Me and my best friend, Eric Poe, we built a truck in 23 days and worked our full-time job, and literally, like we talked before the podcast, sleeping about 2.5 hours a day for 23 days. We built a 54 GMC Deuce and a half. The big military cabs.
Yep.
We narrowed that thing 14 inches, took 20 inches off the bottom and chopped it 9. Basically, I took that big, massive cab that you could fit 4 grown-ups across the seat. That's how wide it was.
Yeah.
And we made it about the same size as about a 45 to 47 Ford pickup cab. And we did something. Have you ever seen a truck that's rear wheel drive, rear end in the back, drive shaft, but behind the cab it has no chassis at all, zero chassis?
I can't say that I have.
Yeah, well, that truck was it, and it was in the magazine. I'll send you pictures after the podcast's over. And we built a copper alloy chassis for that. Well, I did. I built a copper alloy chassis for that. And everybody said, oh, that chassis is going to break. You're going to kill yourself, you know. And Rick Logston, super nice guy. He did the article on my truck. And he asked me, he said, everybody says that frame's going to break, Ron. I told him that frame's tougher than woodpecker lips. And that saying was even in Rat Rod magazine. You know, it says the final thoughts from Ron about the copper frame that everybody said would be too soft. It's tougher than woodpecker lips. So that was just a super cool truck. It had billet motorcycle wheels on the front that machined a bolt pattern in. And the rear rims were those GMC 22/8 transit wheels that on all these.
Yep.
Yeah, it had transit wheels on the back built. I mean, that truck was just killer. And we had $2,984 in that, and I ain't lying. And under $3,000 and built that truck in 23 days. And you ever heard of the World of Wheels car show, right?
Yes.
Well, I got a buddy. A friend of mine actually is in the build-off too. He's in the OG class. He lives in Ohio. Well, he said, hey, let's go to Indianapolis, Indiana to the World of Wheels car show. And I said, okay, we'll try. Well, you got to submit a picture of what you're bringing, or they'll even let you bring.
Yeah.
Well, it was a week prior to the show, and I called the guy. I'm pretty sure his name was Tom. And I said, hey, Tom, I said, my name's Ron Lahr. I'm in Kentucky. I sent you a picture of my truck. Can we bring it? Not. And he said, what is it? I said, it's an old deuce and a half. And we named the truck Slight Miscalculation. And I said, well, the name of the truck's Slight Miscalculation on the door. He said, oh, yeah, I've seen it. Because you have to, like I said, submit pictures. And he said, yeah, you can bring that truck up. So we take the truck to the show to World of Wheels. And he said, hey, pull that truck over there to the side for a minute. And I didn't know. I've never been there. I didn't know. So we pulled it over to the side. And we're waiting about 20, 30, 40 minutes. I don't know. It was pretty good time. And I was getting a little agitated. And I'm like, well, I told Eric, I said, I'm going to go over and ask him what's going on. Well, he come over there and I said, hey, why'd you make us wait? He said, cool, I got a special spot for this truck. And I said, okay. We got the number one spot in the whole show. So when you walked in the World of Wheels, you had to walk around our truck. He said, that is the ingenuity in that truck is better than anything I've seen in 30 years for $2,900.
Hey, you can't beat that.
Well, it made me, it shows that's what, like I said, that's, as a kid, that's what my uncle told me, don't build anything like anybody else. And if you can build a low dollar vehicle to compete with a high dollar vehicle,
Yep.
It's what your mind did and not your wallet.
Yep.
And, that's that Rat Rod magazine 30-day build was probably the best experience I ever had in the car industry. And I didn't win. And I was still thrilled to death.
But you did. And that's kind of the cool part about it is you might not have won on paper, but the friendships, the kudos, all of that stuff that's all. I mean, whenever we go somewhere, the trophy don't mean a whole lot. It's people coming up and kind of giving you props for being able to, do whatever it is. If somebody says, hey, that's a nice car, it means something when it's coming from somebody that you respect.
Well, I mean, when I go, like, I think at this show here, I think you're going to see some really, really humdinger rides. I mean, there's going to be, like, I'm really good friends with another guy, Thomas Cooley. I know he'll build something cool.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of guys out there that are going to just, and I'm even talking about the blue collar class or even the newbies. I mean, some of these guys don't have any self-worth of what they can do, and they might be better than Chip Foose, and they just don't know it yet.
Well, and also, there's so many, it's a wide array of, at least the ones that I've talked to, it's a wide array of difficulty of a build. Building, all the way down from the newbie that, the father and son team. That pickup truck that they're building is going to be cool as shit. And it's not going to be the most difficulty build, but it's a father and son on their first build. And it's going to be cool.
Absolutely.
And all the way up to some of the people that I've talked to that are legit pushing the envelope on what's possible, or trying to go above and beyond to have their ability, to push. It's not really a contest versus each other. It's more a contest of
you against yourself.
Each other. Yeah.
Like, what I like about Jeremiah so much is because I wanted to be an OG, and he called me, or no, he didn't call me. He messaged me on Messenger. He said, what do you think about doing OG? I'm like, I don't care. I'll try. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's just, I've never done, on everything that I built myself, the interior's always been just the bare minimum, the interior.
Yeah.
So on this one, I'm going to try to build a really cool interior. And like we talked prior, I'm not good with sheet metal. I'm not good with paint. That's not my forte. I'm a chassis builder. If you want a super awesome chassis, I can make that happen for you. But
right.
Like doing chops, and I don't have a bead roller. I don't know nothing about a bead roller, English wheel, punishing hammer. I don't know how to work none of that stuff. Don't know. But like I said, I've been a machinist for 40 years. I can run a lathe, mill machine, and I can build, stuff down to half thousands. It's just, I'm just in a different trade than a lot of guys. I see the guy, I think Mike Wheeler won the
mm-hmm.
Rat Rod Magazine bill. I mean, that guy, he's good with a bead roller, and he's good with sheet metal, and he's way better than I am.
Oh, and
there's probably a guy, and a newbie is probably better in sheet metal than I am, to be honest with you.
And I've seen, that was another, I've seen a wide array of professions. Jeremiah being a school teacher. And, there's people that, like you, maintenance and with a machinist background. There's guys that are, the gentleman I talked to earlier in the week, he's a big he likes custom paint.
Yeah.
And he loves paint, and he's going to incorporate what he can on his build with the custom paint, but also, kind of pushing the rat rod not into completely custom shiny paint, but kind of blending the styles. You're going to see a bunch of a bunch of stuff that, you know, might not necessarily be everyone's cup of tea, but I can guarantee that there's going to be something there that fits anyone that attends, you know, anyone that meets y'all in Mississippi. You're going to be able to find something there that's going to blow your mind or, you know, make you think. And that's really, whenever we take a car somewhere, that's really all we're looking for, is for somebody to ask the question, you know, how'd you do this? Or, you know, what made you go this way? Or that's a nice car.
Well, I've got a, you know, guy, I guess God's gave me a crazy imagination I can do. And I'm thankful that I have the mindset that I do, because I can make, you know, things cheaply that look high dollar. Like when we built my buddy Eric, this is a funny story. I did something without telling him about it, because I just had a vision one day, and I said, I'm going to build this. So I built it, and he didn't know about it. We had a 12-bolt Chevy rear end in the deuce and a half. I took the stock steel cover, right, and I made a quick change. I hand built a quick change, put a quick change cover on the back, and I put a lever on it, and I had a piece of metal sticking down. So when you threw the lever, it would hit another piece of metal like it was clicking a gear in. And it literally cost under $5, but it made the rear end look like a $3,000 rear end.
Right.
And I'll do the same thing on this build on Jeremiah's. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to put 2 levers on it. And that's my cockamamie story. It's a 6-speed quick change. And I'm running, the rear end I'm running in this will be a Colorado 6-lug. I'm doing all 6-lug front end back, 6-lug front and rear end, because I'm putting huge tires on this thing. Like the back, I've already got the wheels. The back wheels are 24-14 wide, and the front ones are 2010s. I'm going to run mud grip tires on it. The front ones will be a 35, 1250, 20, and the back are going to be 40-inch, 1550 wide on that 24-inch rim. So I'm going to be running big, and I ain't even picked the body out yet. But I'm running those wheels and tires. I still don't know what motor I want to run. Like I say, I ain't got my body. I'm torn between 2 frame designs that I'm thinking. If I do the 1 frame design, I actually have to machine on my lathe the tooling to build the frame. But I'm going to show all that. I ain't got nothing to hide. Like, one thing I'm going to do in the interior, you've been around cars a long time. Mm-hmm. I bought an old Elvis pinball machine. I'm narrowing the pinball machine, and that's going to be my console, the pinball machine. And I'm going to make the lights light up, and you be able to play pinball on the console.
That's cool.
So that's the stuff. Like I said, I've never done nothing cool in the interior. So my steering wheel is off of I bought it on eBay. It was, I don't know, $45. It's off of an old 50s model ski boat. It's just a cool looking wheel, and that's the steering wheel. Like the steering column, I hand build all my own steering columns, so all that'll be hand built. Most of my stuff on my build will be hand built, and depending on the body I use, I've got a really nice 27 Dodge 4-door sedan. I'm thinking about either that, or I've got a really cool old Triumph wagon. It's a 4-door wagon, but it's itty bitty. It's a Triumph. I think it's 59 or 60. So depending which way I'm going to lean to will be definitely, like, I got the coolest head and tail lights ever for an open wheel. They come off a World War II battleship, and I've converted them in for 12 volt and all that. And they're really cool. The one thing that I guess I try to do, and I think a lot of people do, I want every square inch of my build to be exciting. I want you to go every inch by inch on my whole build, and you're going to find something every inch that you like. That's kind of how I look at building a car.
That's a good way to think about it. Because, especially that kind of goes back to what you're saying with you don't know what body you're using, but you kind of have the chassis in your head. You kind of know what wheels you're doing. You kind of, you're kind of building it one piece at a time. And in the end, it's going to be a very cohesive build, which those are the builds that I enjoy the most, is not the ones that are, I think it either has to be completely cohesive or it has to be completely doesn't make sense at all.
And another thing that I'm big on is proportions, on how the whole aesthetic of the whole car looks front to back, top to bottom, front to back. But if you're building these cars, you're putting every single part on it. Why don't you make every single part something cool? Whether it's a headlight, shifter, if it's got window cranks. I mean, one guy, that's like when we built the Deuce and a Half, that's what everybody used to tell us on that. I've looked at this truck at the show 8 times, and every time I see something else that I like about it. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm pretty standard. I mean, you can look at all my builds that I've done in the past. You can see a little bit of each build. There's a similarity in each build. And I really want to make this. I'd give anything if my uncle was still alive and he could do this with me. That would be, there's no money on this God's green earth here that would be cooler than him helping me on this build.
Well, I was telling you about the 55 of Bad Idea Customs winning that top, the top 5 mild custom out in the West Coast, and Brian with the other podcast, that was his thing. When I walked back up there, and they had been told that that Ken had won the trophy while I was away, and I come back down, and Brian was standing there, and he was I could tell he was a little shook. And I said, "What's going on, man?" And he said that the car had won the trophy. And he had said something that kind of stuck with me, because my dad has always been my best friend. He's the one that got me into this. We did motorcycles together. We're back doing hot rods together. And he said, I just wish his dad was there to see it. And I pointed out to him, because the 55 still has the chrome reverse wheels from from his dad. And I said, man, he's here. And everything that you build, anything that, I put myself into, it's influenced by the people that have influenced you. So, yeah, your uncle being here would be cool, but he is, because in everything that you do, there's a little piece of him too.
Talking earlier about, we haven't said on the podcast, but, I do own a small company called Chassis Research and Manufacture. It's around 70 products, chassis products for the rat rod, hot rod industry. And I'm trying to think, I can't remember. I think it was 2013 or 2014 when I got my first product, was a 4-link rear suspension that actually Speedway Motors called me and said, "Hey, we'd like you to send us one. We might want to put it in our catalog." I was like, whoa. So when I sent a prototype 4 link to them. And they end up putting that in their catalog. And then over the years, I've got about 6 products right now that I manufacture for Speedway. And my uncle used to have a Speedway catalog. He'd roll it up and keep it in his back pocket. And if he goes to meet a friend, he said, "Hey, I got a nephew who's got stuff in this book." And, you know, and it's not that I did that, you know, it's that he was proud of me, you know, that, hey, we shared this love of cars together, and, you know, you've taken it to another level than basically that I did, you know.
And that's exactly it. I mean, that's, you know, it's awesome when the people that influenced you the most, you can make them proud, make them want to tell your story. And, you know, I go back with building cars or building a car, and it doesn't have to appease anybody but me. If I build it, you know, it's my build, it's my car. I'm the only one that's really got to like it. But in the same token, I want other people to appreciate it as well. But at the end of the day, it's mine. So if you don't like it, oh well, I do.
Well, here's the deal. At a car show, you've got whatever, 100 cars to 5,000 cars. You know, if somebody comes up and don't like what I do, well, there's 3,200 other cars you can look at.
Right.
You know, and I told, when I did the build off in 2015, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Steve Thamet, he called me and he said, "What chances you think you have to win this, Ron?" He called me on the phone, and I said, "Steve," I said, "I can promise you one thing. There'll be as many people around my rig that I build than anybody else. What anybody builds out there, there'll be as many around mine as anybody else's." And I told him the same thing. It's not about winning or losing. It's about being with people that are like-minded like yourself, you know?
Yep.
And, but like I said, on my build for this, I don't know, are you actually going to go to Mississippi with us, or?
We are going to try our darndest to be there.
Well, you know, and like we talked tonight, I want you to look at what I built and just think back. I'm going to go over every inch of Ron's build and see if he was telling me the straight skinny here is this way. And that's how I look at it. You know, every part, you know, I sent you a lot of pictures of Trailer Park Millionaire, and there is just little, I think you can over trinket a car.
Yes.
In my opinion only, I think you can over trinket a car. You can add too much to it.
Mm-hmm.
If you add too much to it, it takes away again. So, and I like to, you know, like the grill shell is just a stamped steel Model A grill shell. It's nothing fancy, but I found a really cool badge on eBay for $9, and it was an old stove company. And I put that on there, and it just looks awesome. You know, just a little subtle, that 1 inch area of that grill shell, because everybody's got a Model A grill shell. So how can I make my Model A grill shell stick out more than the other 550 million Model A grill shells?
It's very true.
You know, I did everything with money on that car, because I do everything on a budget. When that truck is done driving down the road, I'll have about 8,500 in it.
That's absolutely crazy.
And that's what everybody said. When we built the Deuce and a Half, I can't tell you how many people called me a liar. There's no way you built that for $3,000. There's no way. And I would break it down.
I've said it on here that, a matter of fact, I told Jeremiah when we first talked, I said, y'all's marketplace is way different than mine. Because I ain't got no shot of building any of those cars for what y'all say y'all have in them. And I forget who it was. It was one of the builders. And I said that. And he went, well, yeah. He's like, but you're thinking, when you get ready to do something, you're thinking about it right now. You're not waiting around. You're not looking for the deal. If you come up in your head, hey, I want to do this, you're thinking of, okay, I'm buying this right now to do this. I said, yeah. He goes, that's not how he's like, on these build offs, he said, you can't do that. He said, you have to go, okay, I'm doing this. This is what I want to use. This is where I'm at. This is what I need for the build off. Okay, all right, that come up. It's a good deal. Let me go snatch it up. Okay, that's a good deal. Let me go snatch it up. Oh, that's not such a good deal, but I have it in the back of my head. If I need it, I can go get it. And I said, okay. And he's like, a good for instance. And he told me, he's like, he said, I was looking at this body for a month. And I'm like, that's the body I want to use. That's the body I want to use. He's like, but it was just a little bit more than I wanted to pay for it, or that I needed to get it for to stay under budget. He said, and I called the guy up and I offered him, whatever. And the guy was like, man, absolutely not. I'm sorry. I just can't sell it for that. And he goes, about 2 months later, the guy called me and said, were you serious? Yep. And he was like, well, yeah. He goes, well, you still want it? Yeah. Come get it. And I'm like, okay, that makes it a little more a little more believable. But still, I'm like, though, but also marketplace. I realize this with being able to get to some of these shows and travel and stuff like that, and meeting people, like y'all that aren't necessarily in my backyard, going and switching marketplace over to their zip code, going, okay, yeah, a C10 here is way more expensive than it is over there. But Model A's are really, really cheap here, or cheaper here than they are in Texas, or vice versa. He's like, so you have to be willing to drive. Exactly. And when the deal pops up, you got to be there to go get it.
And you got to be, especially because if there's a deal, say there is a 29 Model A two-door sedan body, and it's a kid, and he bought it from this old guy that liked him, but he's just ready to move it, and he puts it on for $1,000. He's going to have 250 people message him. Yeah. And you just got to be, I call them marketplace, that's their full-time job. They're combing it every day, all day long to get the deals. And they will. I've done that. I mean, the 27 Dodge that I have, it's been in dry storage since 75. And the kid got it from his grandpa. He's not going to do nothing with it. He wanted $2,000 for it. And I drove 6 hours to go get it. Yeah. So I was in it 14-hour day to go get that. But here's the deal. Okay, I've got $2,000 in it. The one thing I'm going to use is the main body. So I've got all them other parts I can sell.
Right.
Even if I get $1,000 out of all the extra parts, the hood, the fenders, the grill shell, the chassis or whatever, hey, I've got $1,000 in the body.
Right.
And that's how I look at it, Now, if you actually, factored in your gas and your, if your wife went with you and you guys ate a Texas Roadhouse for $100, and,
Yeah. And also a lot of, it's easier to stay on a budget whether you're forced to do it or you do it on your own, doing your own work. If you have if you have to piece out all the wiring, that costs money that somebody that would tackle that by themselves wouldn't have that.
And I don't even buy wiring harnesses. I buy a fusible block from Speedway Motors for $4.88, and I buy 2 strands of wire. And I mean, I've literally got probably in all my wiring harnesses $25, $30, because all you're running is your headlights, your tail lights, your high-low beam, and your dash lights is all I run.
Right.
I don't do turn signals, and I don't do none of that. But I do put all my wires in wire loom, and I do solder every joint, and I got the right tools to crimp the wires and the ends on right. And, I'm the one wiring it, so I know which wire goes where. If I have an issue, I know.
Well, speaking of shows, is there a show or event that you've never made that you would like to make?
Absolutely. I'd love to go to, well, there's actually 2 I'd love to do. I'd love to go back to the 50s. I think it's in Minnesota. And I want to go to the Lone Star Roundup in Texas. That is 2 shows that I would love to do.
Is there a show or event that you never miss?
Absolutely. The Redneck Rumble, Lebanon, Tennessee. I know the guy that puts it on, Tommy Williams, fantastic man. And I went to his first show, and I think he had 14 cars there. Now you can't stir them with a stick. It's so many.
Yeah, that's one of our
21 years, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the shows that I would like to get out to. Hopefully soon.
You want to go to the fall one. The spring one's awesome now, but the fall one's unbelievable.
That kind of tends to be the thing with most shows that have went to a spring and fall, because like we have Turkey Rod Run here, and they recently started a spring show, and it's some people like it because it's slower, it's less, but
congested.
Yeah. And Moultrie, Georgia, the same thing. We did go up to the Moultrie one for the spring, and I was like, man, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And everyone there was like, oh yeah, if you were going off of stories of what people say, they're not talking about this one, they're talking about the fall.
Yeah, well, here's the thing too, just like you said, same thing with the Redneck Rumble. He's only been doing the spring one about, I think, 4 or 5 years. Give it another 5 years, and I think it'll be just as big as the fall.
Yeah.
Now, I set up as a vendor at the Redneck Rumble. I've only took a car there once. I usually just set up as a vendor. And actually, last year, I made more money at the spring one than I did the fall one.
There was some good deals at the Moultrie Fall Show. I just, wasn't able to capitalize.
Well, it's like we talked about. It's times are pretty tough. I mean, when you go to the grocery store and you take out 5 bags of groceries and you spend $150, that's hard on the pocketbook.
Oh, and everything is more expensive than it was 10 years ago. Like we were talking about with the housing. I mean, used to be able to afford a nice family home on, if you want to go way back, used to be able to afford it on the father's salary.
Yeah, well, that's what I asked the guy today at work, actually. I said, what happened to it? He's 71 years old. He's a custodian at factory I work at. Well, I work at a warehouse, and he said, what do you mean? I said, well, in the 60s, I said the husband could work, the mom could stay home, and they could raise 3 kids, have a new house, new car, and the dad had a hobby. Yeah. He built motorcycles or cars on one salary. And I said, now the husband's working, the wife's working, and it still ain't making it.
Yep.
So what happened in 60 years? It's went down. What is flipped that needs to be reflipped again? So the American and I think that we talked earlier about there's no 20s and 30-year-olds at the car show. If you got flipped the screen here where things were affordable again, I think the young kids would want a big car.
I think that there would be more. I think I think one of the flip-flops was technology and, for lack of a better way of saying it, the taking the ability to work on your own vehicle out of the equation.
And it's like this new stuff, I'm old school. I mean, all this LS stuff and these Coyote motors and all that, I don't have a clue how to work on it. I've just not put my time into it. It just don't interest me. I can build a motor, but I don't consider myself an engine builder.
Right.
I built probably 8 or 10 small block Chevys and maybe 4 or 5 big block Chevys, from putting a crank in it, setting the valves and setting the distributor and making it run. But I don't know nothing about this new. I don't know nothing about fuel injection.
Well, and also, I've said this numerous times too. We're all doing the same stuff, whether it's a mini truck, whether it's a hot rodder, whether it's tuners. I hate to say it, or I'm gonna get some shit for it, but squatted trucks or stance cars or any of that stuff, a hot rodder calls it channeling, mini truckers call it body dropping. We're all switching the wheels out to what we want. We're all doing motor swaps. We're all doing metal work. It's all the same stuff. It's just different generations of builds. And the LS, and my Cadillac has an LS in it. But the LS motor is the small block Chevrolet of this generation. You used to be able to go to the junkyard and pick up a decent small block, pick your brand, but mostly small block Chevrolets because they were the cheapest and most abundant. But you could pick up a small block Chevrolet, bring it home, freshen it up a little bit, throw it in your car, and you'd have something. Now you go and you yank out an LS or a Coyote or a new Hemi or whatever the case may be, and it takes away some of the tuning, the having to get it right. I will never say that I'm a carburetor guru, nor will I say that I'm a LS tuning guru, but it takes away that we need to be able to figure out some way to bridge the gap of so much technology that you're incapable of working on it without a laptop or without a fancy computer that only the dealership has. I was reading an article, I forget what brand it was, but it doesn't even have a dipstick for the trans or the motor. They change the oil and you drive it, and then you bring it back to the dealership and they change your oil. And it's like you can't. They're trying to get away from you physically being able to work on your vehicle, and I don't know if that's a change in people just being lazy, or I don't know if that's a change that of the way the world has become with everything. We've gotten so reliant on technology. And I've said this so many times that we're in a time period right now that everything is so easily accessible, but communication has went out the window. Social media and technology is great, but it's also the worst thing, because you used to have to go to a swap meet to pick up parts. If you wanted to see what George Barris or Gene Winfield or Foose, Ken Diggett, any of those guys were bringing to the Riddler or to America's Best or any of those shows, you had to physically go to the show and see it. Cars were unveiled, and now you just go on their Instagram or their Facebook or their social media or their website, and that's what they're doing. It's gotten, and then everybody's so quick to send a message on social media. Call me, swing by my house, let's sit down and bullshit.
Yeah, I think the personal interaction anymore is kind of went away.
Yep.
And that's even with me, even like you buy and sell a lot on Marketplace, and I buy and sell a lot on Marketplace. I'm older. I'm not a big texter. I don't text a lot. So I give them my phone number. Hey, if you're interested, call me. Oh, well, that's against Marketplace rules, I guess.
Yeah.
So they just want to keep on texting.
Well, and also on the same thing with the phone number. My dad, every once in a while they'll sell stuff. When we were doing motorcycle parts, my mom would list stuff to sell because he was retired, so he could meet people. And, he would give people, obviously you take your first message, on Marketplace, and he'd give them a phone number. Or if he was looking to buy something, hey, can I call you? And it was like he would give them a number and they would never call because they didn't want to talk on the phone. And it's like, and I would, sometimes, and I'm guilty of it. If it's something that I can get a point across and it's not going to be a conversation, I'll shoot you a message. When you read it, you read
absolutely.
It. But if we're gonna go back and forth, call me.
Especially if you're talking about buying something or selling something. Okay, you're physically going to come to my house and buy this engine I'm selling. I mean, you're going to talk to me physically. What's wrong with talking? I mean, it's not like I want your phone number that I'm just pursuing that I'm going to call you every day and we're going to be the bestest of friends.
Right.
It's just a different generation. And it's like, I've got 4 kids, and my oldest is 31. My youngest is 22. And their communication, 90% is through a text message. And when the first text they do, they done text me 3 or 4 more times. Their phone's ringing. I'm calling them. They know that I don't do this. So why don't you just call Dad instead of texting? I can understand if you're at work or you're somewhere where a phone call won't work. And I understand that. But most time they're just chilling at their house.
Yeah. And my dad my dad's gotten better now, but my dad used to just text, was it JFCM? Just fucking call me. If it goes past one text message, just fucking call me. We'll figure it out. If you can't talk, call me when you can.
Exactly. And I don't know. I'm hoping, I'm totally looking forward to going, and I hope you and your wife can make it. I'd love to meet you in person. And I'm a big jokester, and I love to have fun. I'll tell you about the 2015 Rat Rod magazine build-off. Everybody had to have a team name. Got to have a team name. and I wish Jeremiah, I need to send him a message. I wish he would do this. When we did those build-offs, there was only 10 builders, right? But we had our own private Facebook page where we could chat just between the 10 builders and give each other crap and lift each other up, mess with each other. And it was awesome. I think I loved that probably more, almost. I loved it as much as doing the build-off. Is like, the deuce and a half shouldn't have been called slight miscalculation. I told my buddy it should have called the great deceiver because, I told you it was a copper alloy frame, right?
Yeah.
Well, I found this paint. This is what I do. This is where how my mind works. I found a paint that goes on with a brush. So it was a carbon steel frame that I built, and you take this, and it's got real copper in it. So you paint it on, it's self-leveling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you spray this acid on there, and it looks like 200-year-old copper. I mean, you can't tell the difference. That's what everybody kept saying. We were like, that copper's too soft. Oh, so it's copper alloy, guys. And that was the big joke, through the 10 builders that everybody said, how in the heck are you building a copper frame and it's holding up? I said, but that's where your mind, like in my build, I'm going to have some super high-end seats in this build. What did I tell you? I'm going to do really good on the interior, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what seats I'm buying? Are 1950 brand new vintage kitchen chairs, and I'm just cutting the legs off of them. All 4 of them is $179. And these things are awesome. That's what I'm going to run for seats. The average person that comes in there and says, oh my God, he's got $2,000 in seats. I got $179 in little fabrication, and I'm going to put them on sliders and that, like I said, I build on a budget. It's easy. Like you said, it's easy to get in the books. Hey, I want that part. It's $1,200. I want that part. I'm an outlaw class. If you want to spend $200,000 on your car, you can do it. Hey, I want this brand new compound turbo Cummins for $38,000. If you got the dough, hey, get her. I'm still debating on, like I said, me and you talked, I don't even know what I want to run for a motor. I'm thinking about running an inline 6-cylinder. I might run an inline 6. Like I said, I'll have under 12,000 my whole build. I told you,
I thought you had the motor picked out.
Well, it depends on what I build. See, I don't. I've got 5 brand new small block Chevys in my shop. That I've got an engine builder guy. He's a good friend of mine, and I trade chassis work for him building me engines. So I've got 5 brand new small blocks, but I'm just kind of burnt out with small block Chevys. I don't know if you ever did any research on the Mercedes 5-cylinder diesels. They were made, like the 84 and 85s are the best. I've got one of them out there on a run stand. Runs great, automatic transmission. I bought the motor and transmission for $600, and it runs. I can go out there right now and flip a switch and hit the key, and it'll start right up. It's 125 horsepower. I thought about running that. I don't really know yet. I don't know. I've got so many. See, if I run the Triumph wagon, I want to leave the front end on it, the doghouse on it. And I want to run the headers through the front fenders. And I thought about if I build that, putting an LS in it. Have a feel, because you're not going to see the motor. The motor's not going to be exposed.
See, I agree with that. I'm not opposed to an LS motor under a hood.
No, I'm not either. Or a Coyote or a Hemi or whatever. I mean, everything will look clean. If you pop the hood, everything will look neat and orderly. And I mean, I love the LS, some of the ingenuity coming out on it, where you can put 409 valve covers on it, and you can take an LS and kind of make it look kind of old school.
Yeah. It just takes a lot more money to make an LS motor pretty.
It does. I think those valve covers, you got to buy the adapters and the valve covers. They're like $1,200.
Yeah. Yeah, I ended up, because I had thought about, because they make Chevrolet script ones, and I had a gentleman that was gonna mill me a set of 62 Cadillac, the script Cadillac logos in them, and whenever I got to looking, I'm like, man, to buy the valve covers, and then you have to buy different coils that hide in the covers, and then, you know, heaven forbid something goes wrong. Now you got to try to take it off. And it was like one thing leads to another thing leads to another thing. And I'm like, there's a hood on the car. Ain't nobody going to see it.
And that's what I'm saying. If I go that route, if I go the 27 Dodge route, then it's going to be exposed motor, and I want to build something cool. You know, I thought about running a 292 inline old Chevy 6-cylinder, because they make a lot of, you know, like I said, I've got a buddy, and he's actually my engine builder, and I've already talked to him about building a fairly healthy, maybe a 350 horse inline 6. You know, I was going to hand build an intake and hand build the header for it, but it would still be a motor that if something happened on the road, I can work on it.
Yeah.
You know, I know how the motor works. I don't know nothing about a transmission. So I will definitely be putting probably a turbo 350 in it, and I've got a phenomenal transmission guy. And I will just take it to Joe and say, Joe, this is a horsepower run. This one a brand new, reliable, and it'll be good for 400,000 or 500,000 miles. You know, I'm all about drivability too. I want something I know when I go out. That's what I kind of do like about an LS though. It's fuel injected and things are right. You go out and just bump that button, it's running. And it's going to run if it's 25 degrees out or if it's 90.
I mean, that was part of the reason why I wanted the LS, and her car was going to be LS at one time, was for that simplicity of walk out there, hit the button.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, with the Cadillac, I wanted the 4L60. 4L80 would have been better, but you have to cut the trans tunnel, and I didn't really want to cut the floor up on the car. But I wanted overdrive because I want to be able to get up on the interstate and cruise it and not have to, you know, worry about it being out of gearing or out of RPM or anything like that. I wanted something that would get out and cruise and be fine. And like when I got rid of the Model A, that motor, the small block that was going in it, I'd already went through it, and she's gotten pretty good at operating a carburetor. So at the time I was thinking LS was because I didn't want her to have to mess with choke and throttle and all that. I just wanted her to be able to hit a button and go. But she's gotten pretty good. She can get up until the 235 gave up. She was getting pretty good at getting out there and starting it and keeping it running until it warmed up and everything like that. So I'm not worried about it. But also if I ever did want to, you know, I could put a Sniper or you know, there's 3 or 4 different fuel injection companies now that make.
I'm with you on that. I thought about the same thing. I've got like I said, I've got 5 brand new small blocks. There's a couple of them that are probably 400 horsepower. You know, they got aftermarket heads on them and H-beam rods in them, and you know, Ford flat top pistons and pretty gnarly cams in them. And thought about doing the same thing. Maybe if just going with a Sniper, or, you know, I've got a couple connections at Holly, and I could probably get a fairly good price on one of those. I think they only retail for $1,200 or $1,300. I could probably, I don't know, through my connection, I might be able to get $300-400 off of it. Yeah. Get for around $1,000.
Well, and that 53 that I showed you that came last year that I sent you pictures of that towed the dragster down. He took it's a single barrel on a 250 inline six, and Holley doesn't make a single barrel for the Chevrolet pattern, but the Autolite, the Ford pattern, is within millimeters. So he adapted he adapted the Ford Autolite single barrel carburetor, and that car's got Holley fuel injection on it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know, and they come out of Missouri, she come from Oklahoma, and up to our show had no issues. And, you know, it runs good. I mean, there's something that's the one good side about technology. I mean, it does make it a little more simpler. And hopefully that leads to more people getting into this.
And I really, truly, like I said, I truly believe that, you know, I'm positive that we have another 20 strong years in the hot rod industry. And like I said, I'm hoping the economy over the next 5-8 years it gets better, and it opens the door up for more younger kids to get into it. And I don't have no secrets. If anybody calls me, I mean, my phone number that you call me on is my cell number. You can look up Chassis Research. It tells about my business, and it's got my cell number. I mean, anybody can call me, and I'll give them the best advice I can give them. You know, if they're building an open-wheeled hot rod, and they say, hey, what do you think about this, that, or this? And I'll tell them to my best of my ability, the truth, and and I tell everybody, you don't have to buy my product, but in my years of experience, this is what I run. Like I designed a new set of ladder bars, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago, and I wish I'd have figured it out 15 years ago, because these things are just awesome. Not because I designed them, just because of how they work. Because, like I said, I do all open wheel stuff, and on a coupe and a sedan, if you channel it and everything, if you do like a regular ladder bar, the top bar would always want to hit the bottom of the body. But I've got around that. I figured a way to keep the ladder bar really narrow up front and get bigger in the back. And it's one of my best sellers. I sell, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 sets a year, probably, of those. You know, it's a really good product.
Well, before we get out of here, what is one piece of advice that you would give somebody that's trying to get into cars?
I would give the best piece of advice I could give to anybody is follow your own path. You're going to get so much static from your friends or your parents. Do what you're passionate about building. Go that route. And slow down, take your time on the money. I mean, far as take an extra month to find the headers you want on Marketplace, or, you know, take your time and think things through. It's easy to throw that money out there and get stuff. Before you know it, you've got 50 things in your shop that's not going to work for what you're wanting, because you're excited and you're passionate. Hey, I got to get it. Think things through, front to back, top to bottom. You know, if I mount my motor here and I put these headers on it, is my steering linkage going to hit? You know, and if you don't know, ask. I mean, I'm sure there's tech guys at Speedway Motors or tech guys at Summit. There's guys on chassis like me. A guy could call me and say, hey, Ron, I want to build an open wheel, blah, 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 blah. And I would say, there's, in a car, you can spend little money or you can go to the moon. You know, when I get people even call me and say, hey, Ron, I want you to build me a roller chassis. How much? I said, well, you're talking $5,000 to $30,000. if you want just a cheap front end or you want an all chrome drilled forged I-beam, you're talking just in the front end, $5,000 difference in money. I would just tell like a new guy or somebody that's really wanting to get into it is, follow your own path. If you want to build a lowrider or a mini truck or whatever, build it your way. Don't worry about if my buddy's going to like it or the neighbor ain't going to like it. You'll find out at the end of the day that there's more people out there that like the same ideas that you have than you think. And another thing too, with the build off, like I'm in the OG, I am going to donate one chassis part to each class other than the outlaw class. So the newbie, I'm gonna get with Jeremiah, one person in the newbie class, one person in the blue collar, one person in the OG is going to get a one-off built part from Ron Lahr. No money. I'm paying the shipping. I'm going to pay for all the parts, the shipping, and they'll get a T-shirt, a sticker, and they'll arrive at their house at no cost to them. I don't care if you want to advertise for me or not. That's just something that I would like to do for one person, probably the person that's probably struggling the most.
That's very commendable of you.
And like I said, none of whatever they get, they can say, I'm going to tell you another little story before we get off the podcast here. All my friends, I've been building pretty crazy stuff for a lot of years of my life. And you were talking earlier, I wasn't getting the credit for it. The people that bought it would go to shows, oh, look what I built, look what I built. And back in the day, that really bothered me. But then one day, it was like a light switch went off in the head. Well, if they said they built it, that takes all the liability off of me. I said, so, yeah, you did a great job, buddy. That's fantastic. So, it's funny how when you get older, certain things back when you're younger bother you, but that stuff, that don't bother me anymore. There's more to life than worry about somebody taking credit for something you did.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and talking to us, man. And I look forward to hopefully catching up with you in Mississippi.
Yeah, it's great talking to you too. And send me on Messenger your address and you and your wife's shirt size, and I'll send you a hoodie. I
appreciate that.
I'll send you a hoodie and a couple stickers and get that taken care of. And through this podcast or conversation we had, I just hope we inspired one person to say, hey, I'm going to try to build me a car.
That's the goal. Well, for everybody else, till next time, get out and drive your shit. Later.